All right, there we go. Hello, everybody. I'm late. I'm late in two ways because this apparently came out on Friday, and I had no idea it was even this week. So sorry about that. Uh, what? It happens, I guess. I mean, I was working all weekend. I wouldn't have been able to do like an extra stream or a recording anyway, even if I knew about it. So I haven't gone over this at all. This is gonna be completely blind. We'll see what happens. You prefer blind read better, TBH? That's fair. I like to the reason I like to go over it before stream is just to kind of give more complicated, sophisticated thoughts on things, let my opinions percolate a little more before without having to sit down twice to go over stuff, but that's just me though. Alright, let me I have not gotten music going, so let's do that. I think audio balance was okay. I tested it earlier, but I've already forgotten. Find out. That looks good. Let me go down a little bit though, just so I can think. GeForce, go away. Alright. Sorry about the scuff at the beginning here. Let's get started. Ahoy, comrades! Wolkeg here. Hope everyone enjoyed their window into how the other half lives with the administrative government dev diaries, because today we're going back to the mud with our favorite homeless wanderers, landless adventurers. Show off the art during the stream. Maybe I have to read before the game. Sure, sounds good. Ooh, see, I knew I needed to turn that down. Is that gonna be too loud? I'm gonna cut the volume just a little. A little further. There we go. Alright, as usual, everything shown here is a work in progress. Values are likely to be changed, features are final, but details are not. All that good stuff. In particular, features are final, but details are not. Right, okay. I read that backwards in my head, even though I think I read it out loud correctly. In particular, some of the adventurer contract rewards are currently a smidge high right now. So we're taking those down a bit, specifically in terms of gold and prestige, pending further playtesting before release. Like the admin government dev diaries, this will be two parts. In part one, we'll go over the basic design and core gameplay loop, and in the next diary, we'll go into more detail about the individual nuts and bolts that make up that system. By the way, this is a another massive dev diary. Would not display fully on Steam. I had to open in browser just to be able to read it, so we might be in here for the long haul. Overview of a landless adventurer's camp. Okay, so this is great. This is one of the things I was worried about. I don't know if they've like hinted at this before or not, and I've just missed it. I don't think they've. I think this is the first we're seeing any hint of this. It's good that we're gonna have a holding of sorts to work with here, even if it's minimal. Because I was really worried about, oh, fucking Christmas music, hilarious. I forgot this was in this soundtrack. Because I was worried that Landless Adventuring was just going to be a series of event boxes that would get old after a while, but this could be more sophisticated gameplay. This could hint at more sophisticated gameplay, and I hope that's the case. Alright. Taking a sip of coffee. Let's start off with the question a few of you have already been asking yourselves. Why did we pick landless adventurers instead of, say, nomads? Great question. Well, we've already given the answer a little on this forum, but let's cover it again quickly for the folks who don't follow every little dev post. Sorry. Initially, we envisioned the expansion as being both systems heavy and a detailed look at the Byzantine Empire, both highly requested focal points for a DLC. That naturally became administrative play. We were then casting around for something to round that out, since the entire expansion that's just administration and just Byzantium wouldn't have much else for the rest of the map, which is a point of feedback we've gotten when we've done regional flavor packs previously, let alone a highly regional expansion. They're listening. This isn't necessarily one of my biggest complaints with the recent updates, but it shows they're listening, and that's a really good sign because of how rocky the first few expansions have been. Focus would still be too narrow, even if some other areas might become administrative over the course of a campaign, so we need to add something a bit more broadly applicable. Another heavily systems-based government type would be too large, as we'd end up doing two government types poorly rather than one government type well, which is why we're not getting nomads. That rules that out. We investigated a few possible alternative features to see if we could portray them without detracting from the challenge of adding a whole new way of playing Crusader Kings 3. Wait, does that... That feels like an admission that they are planning nomads. I really want to see nomads done well. I was never happy with them in CK2. More coffee. Nomads worked fine in CK2, they just weren't fun to play. Kalista, you are a fluffy girl. Mama Bear's so proud of you. Nomads could be great, I agree. Your camp exists at a physical place on the map, much like estates do. Fantastic. Can it move? Is the question. I do have this on shuffle, right?
That's a nice head you have on your shoulders.
Oh no, Songzi
coffee happy, Ani.
Oh my god, Moni. Thank you for 12 months. I really appreciate it. That means the world. How has it been a year already? That's crazy. Of those, landless adventurers turned out to be the ideal candidate. A lot of the underlying technical work they required could be done with fairly little extra costs at the same time as administrative gameplay. They didn't need the broad extra mechanics and systems that other governments would require to really feel like an improvement. Right? Prior to this, adventurers had been pinned into something we could maybe do in the game's lifespan if we did them simultaneously with administrative play. However, then they offered something we thought we could do a good job on without hurting either mechanic. I mean, it makes sense because there is going to be a type of landless gameplay alongside administrative by necessity. Them having their own following of requesters was, of course, a nice bonus. Bonus? Bonus. I'm 12. Nomads at all will doubtless get their own time to shine. Doubtless is an interesting choice of words. I'm reading too much into this. But we want to wait until a point where they can truly be the stars of their own shows. Depending on how they implement nomads, they could add the literal full map. Not that they would, but they absolutely would. Oh, they wouldn't. There's no way we're ever getting New World in Crusader Kings. I still think China's a stretch, even if it's more possible now with admin. But it's possible. But China's possible, but New World, no way. Okay, so what we do see, what do we see adventurous as even being? Crusader Kings is a game about marriage, inheritance, and complex realm politics, none of which really apply to wandering characters with nary a vassal to call their own. Correct. Simply put, we think of them as the ultimate underdogs, outsiders with no land or prospects, but also no responsibilities or restrictions. A landed character, even the lowliest baron, has a host of functionaries and regular income from taxable subjects, but they also have pressures on their rule that they can't escape. The rigors of ritual and silent formality soak up their time and energy. I mean, also, they may address this further, but adventurers are... Those are your Varangian adventurers. So that's how you make a more reasonable Viking conquest. Without ending up with these realms that all hold one county in Scandinavia still decades later, especially if they're controlled by the player. With Roads to Power, you'll be able to create a custom landless character via the ruler designer at the start of a campaign. That's huge, if a bit obvious. But it's good to address. An adventurer lacks that surety and those benefits, but they also have no demands on their time save those they choose to accept. They'll be able to amass power through hard work and skill rather than privilege and history. And if they so choose, translate that power into a dramatic entrance into the landed stage. We wanted to reflect this philosophy with a playstyle focused on travel and roaming, encouraging you to experience the map in a different way by moving across and spectating it, occasionally stopping to influence this realm or that when you have when you have to proverbially sing for your supper. We wanted your camp to feel more intimate than your court, to have its characters a bit more memorable. Thank you. After all, in a traveling adventurer band, your followers are your resources, and you'll see them literally every day. Naturally, a core part of this is servicing the fantasy of forming a strong mobile mercenary band. But we also don't want players to be restricted to just this. For every Roger de Fleur, there's an Ibn Battua or a Marco Polo, after all. They can't be choosing. We just talked about this. I'm reading too much into Marco Polo. But that can't be on accident. Conquerors of Barbestro. Food meter? Food meter. Food meter. Maximum amount of food. Food. Current. Camp level, location, camp purpose. Become wanderers, swords for hire, become scholars. Become legitimists. Landed, perhaps? Become freebooters, banditry, become explorers. What would explorer be? What's there to explore? Artifacts and... How is explorer different than wanderer, I wonder? Freebooter is... I believe another term for bandits. We can double check that. Pirate or lawless adventurer. So this is really interesting. I still wonder the difference between wanderers and explorers, though. We'll see. Adventurer camps can be given a specific purpose, affording various bonuses or downsides to better accommodate their goals. Finally, we wanted being an adventurer to be viable as a short, mid, or long-term playstyle. Thank you. Perhaps not one you'd pass an entire campaign in, but perhaps not one you'd pass an entire campaign in. Important word miss there. Put a short stint of landlessness before shooting your shot at reclaiming your lands or conquering new ones. Should be viable with a bit of effort, as should staying a wanderer for multiple generations at a time. Excellent. Landing yourself should be possible, especially if you're willing to take the indignity of an impoverished remote county somewhere, but not something you can do with a click of your fingers and no prep work. Those unwilling to accept getting in on the lowest conceivable rung of the feudal ladder should be able to actually try to climb higher. You know, one thing that I wonder about is how... If landless is going to be a playstyle, how is barony play come into this? What happens if you as a landless character inherit a barony? Now that that's possible. Ah, jeez. Always my allergies right as I start streaming. 1 second. We have landless gameplay, but we need nobleless land. That would be cool too. One thing that I thought of, we'll mute it just now for a second, is I've wanted to be able to lead a mercenary company. I want my... Well, there's two things that instantly come to mind. I want my Mountain Blade gameplay in Crusader Kings, and I want my Band of the Hawk moment. And I've wanted that since they added mercenary companies in CK2. So this is kind of... This is getting me a little bit hype. Would work with nomads too. There are some aspects of this that could be paving the way for nomads. That's true. Just like there were parts of administrative that could be paving the way for Republic. When playing as a landless adventurer, the basic gameplay flow is to find yourself in a new location, either because you've moved their camp there or because you just became an adventurer and started there, and to look around for work you could undertake. Work here means contracts. These appear as scrolls on the map, each of which represents a different job. What a job might be is fairly varied, both tonally and mechanically, and we'll go into those in detail in just a moment. Contracts are visible as scrolls on the map surrounding your camp, with a different icon on the scroll depending on the type of contract it represents. The tier of the contract can also be determined by the number of stars at the top of the scroll. Okay, so these are all tier 1. The camp is here. Easy enough. On the map surrounding your camp, so I imagine there's an area of effect. You can only accept jobs within a certain range. Each contract has a minimum of a pass state and a fail state with rewards and penalties for either outcome, though many have various alternate successes and failures depending on whether you get an exceptional result or a below grade one. Generally, we only show you the standard reward packages here. If you complete a contract with to your employer's satisfaction, you'll receive resources like gold prestige, sometimes piety, and new adventurer-specific provisions. So this is our food bar as provisions. As with administrative families, adventurers have a domicile. Unlike the grand estates of an administrative realm, our humble wanderers only have a camp to call their own. The gold they earn can be spent on building upgrades here, generally instituting new organizations or customs rather than permanent structures. Martially inclined adventurers may also spend it on building and maintaining large armies. Martially inclined may spend it on large armies. Yeah, we're getting Mountain Blade gameplay. Does that mean that you may not necessarily have an army, that you have to spec into having a large army? Or do you have to spec into having a large army? Camps like estates can be upgraded over time. It's great art. I love the art with this this new expansion. Prestige is needed to advance your fame, which both governs the tier of rulers who offer you contracts. Kings and emperors won't hand them out to just anybody, and even dukes look askance at those without a monicum of fame, and unlocks increasingly more powerful versions of ways to become landed. Interesting. Provisions are spent to allow you to travel with your camp across the map. While you can move on low or even no provisions, you'll suffer increasingly dramatic consequences for doing so. When you exhaust the contracts you wish to take in a particular area, you can most easily find new ones by moving your camp a significant distance away, or to a new de jure kingdom that you haven't visited recently. When you take new contracts, earn new rewards, and repeat the process as you move around the map, you gather new followers from different lands. Try to balance your provision income versus expenditure and decide which contracts you think you're capable of taking and when. Play in the Alps, Mountain Blade. Yes. Should let unlanded camp in impassable terrain, but can only leave the way they came at a massive provision cost. Yes. Might be overcomplicated for this expansion, but yes, that would be extremely cool. Your camp can be moved to new regions of the world, but doing so costs provisions. Shit, I gotta sneeze. Accept travel plan. Estimate arrival, provision cost. We do expect some players to want to be adventurers for as little time as possible, and others to want to be them for centuries at a time. Off-ramps are provided at various stages for players who decide they want to leave the life of an adventurer. It's up to you if you'd be happy taking a backwater county somewhere in exchange for a huge sum of cash, building an army to try retaking your throne, or to simply drift around the world making your mark in half a dozen small ways. Sick. Love it. Fundamentally, contracts are a vehicle for different types of content you'll opt into in hopes of rewards you generally see in advance. Ooh, in advance. Different jobs offer different rewards, and rulers of higher tier in turn offer higher tier contracts with all-around better rewards. The jobs themselves range from helping in wars to assisting counselor tasks to educating children to collecting back taxes. They're an abstraction of the word of mouth, heralds, spies, and town criers that would have filled this role historically, but which are a smidge tricky to represent with neat, concise visuals, which is why we've gone for this sort of faux notice board aesthetic. It's fine. Perfectly acceptable to me. If this looks familiar to you from the administrative dev diaries, well, it should. Governor duties use the same basic system for a little extra spice in their districts, but it was added primarily as a core mechanic for adventurers to connect back to the world. Ambush Travelers, Contract Tier 1, Contractor. Requires you to travel to a district holding, waylaying characters to take their gold as you go either via prowess, martial, or intrigue challenges. This is a criminal contract. Quinaserine is bedeviled by robbers, bandits, and brigands of all kinds. Proficient fighters sought urgently. Direct all dealings to the Beg of Quinaserine. This one requires you to ambush travelers on the road. One thing I should probably nip in the bud immediately is what contracts you as a landed character can offer an adventurer. Yes. With the exception of mercenary contracts, all contracts are offered by AI only. I don't know how I feel about that. We approach them this way because they're the core gameplay loop for landless adventurers, which means adventurers are expected to do a lot of contracts. That means that variety is key in order to show the rate at which individual contracts grow stale, and if they were bilaterally playable, that substantially more than doubles the complexity of just about every conceivable contract. Ultimately, this means we'd be able to make far, far fewer of them. I don't love that. The logic's sound, but I don't love that. I would love to be able to hire contracts. Now, we can still hire mercenaries. Yes. With the exception of mercenary contracts. Essentially, we've opted to prioritize the experience as playing as an adventurer rather than the experience of simply interacting with them. I know not everyone will agree with that decision, but I wanted to be honest about the rationale and help you understand why we've gone this way. Yeah. Okay. That's fair. I'll need to stew on that, but that's a fair fair to just putting that out there. When contracts appear on the map, they have an icon indicating roughly what type of job they're offering you, as well as slightly nicer paper depending on the tier of the employer. Ooh, nicer paper. Hey Viper, good to see you. Opening 1 shows you not just the potential rewards and penalties, but also who the employer is, a little narrative breakdown of what they want, and a plain speech breakdown of what the contract's mechanics will be. Travelers near Trevobolv. Be on the lookout for renegades and reprobates haunting the back roads. Your sword arm is strong and your eye true. Count Ivan promises generous rewards in exchange for the head of a particular thug. Potential rewards: pays money to you, gains opinion of you, gain prestige. Add Count Ivan to your roll of patrons and gain provisions. That is a lot of money. Requires you to slay a particular character either via duel, completing a martial skill challenge, or by throwing your men-at-arms at them and taking losses. I'm doing okay. How about yourself, Viper? I'm very tired. I've been working all weekend. I just got done working 6 days in a row at my day job, and I'm ready. I'm ready for today off. When viewing a contract, you can see a variety of details about what the contract entails. One thing you'll notice quickly is that different contracts offer different rewards. Some might give you mostly gold or primarily prestige, other mainly provisions for the road or a mix thereof. Contracts that offer possible critical successes will generally offer substantial extra rewards, either new currencies or more of the main reward for achieving them. Though the employer's greed may compel them to offer much more or less than usual, too. This is to help encourage you to shop around for different contracts in different areas. Maybe you land in a kingdom full of tight-fisted gits, handing out paltry sums for substantial work, and decide to move on rather than waste your time, even if it means stretching your provisions. Maybe a contract that you normally wouldn't take or might not be very good at happens to be offering rewards simply too good to pass up. Wonders of good breeding. Settle boundary dispute. Experienced arbiter sought by Wali of Sarkhan to settle boundary dispute. Education in Egyptian law preferred. Reward offered for satisfactory conclusion. Requires you to travel to a baron's holding and complete a challenge. You're guaranteed to be able to test stewardship, but other options will depend on what the issue is, what camp purpose you have, your followers, and your officers. Cool. Love that. Especially that I'm assuming officers are, well, officers and followers. Interesting. I love that these... I don't know the difference between these yet, but I love that both of these are options here. Failure, spend prestige and loses opinion. Failing a contract predictably has drawbacks and consequences. Parameters tied to them also tend to vary. Some require no travel, some require you to travel the length of the map, while others might involve a small tour of a character's realm. Some are made up of small linked event chains, others have their own custom micro-decisions. The more common a contract is likely to be, the more we've tried to focus hard on slight replayability and variability, so that the same contract is mechanically and aesthetically a bit different every time, even if you're performing it twice in quick succession. Thank you. Again, my biggest fear here was just a series of events. Finding them is easy and automatic. Contracts are discovered when you either move a certain distance or move to a new de jure kingdom that you've not been to recently. Occasional new contracts also appear in place over time, and when you're traveling, notable contracts may spring up along the route to encourage you to make pit stops. You have multiple contracts at once? Exactly which types of contracts you're likely to find is controlled by your camp purpose. Teased in an earlier image, but something we'll be going into more detail on next week. The base contract mechanic is free for modders to implement regardless of DLC ownership, but the vanilla version of the game only features paid uses of the system. Ooh. That's generous of them. I'm not a modder. So this is very esoteric to me. I'm going to skim over the code here. Feel free to go back and read this either on the VOD or the dev diary itself. Example contracts. We've added a raft of situational contracts tied to what's going on in the game. A few that come specifically from content you see as you play, and then underlying core that are generally valid unless you're really far out in the wild tribal areas, so that adventurers won't run out of ways to earn money or provisions just because no one is currently using a certain council task. That's a lot of words and not enough pictures. Let's take a second and get out a few contracts together, just to give you a more visual idea of how they play. Thank you. As a reminder, we're still in the throes of balancing right now, so these numbers are not final. Gold especially is noticeably too high in some contracts and too low in others. Don't panic, they'll be normalized before release. With that in mind, here's a ruler-designed adventurer I've just made. Not the most interesting character, but a solid generalist with average or above average stats for everything but prowess. She should be suitable for most anything that crosses our path. I've got 2 starting followers whose specialty in diplomacy I picked, though I could have chosen to start utterly alone had I wanted to. Shirin here begins in Kashmir, but longs to explore far from home, and she's going to take us through a few example contracts. Mistress Shirin of the Fiery Vanguard. Shivite Kashmiri, excellent stats, frankly, except for prowess. Lesbian, we love that. Followers, 2 diplomats, as said. Brand the Simple is a dummy. Shirin's stats are well-rounded, which allow her to demonstrate several types of contracts for us. Hers will try her hand at a very simple scheme contract. Some of these have ongoing events, some are very simplistic, but were generally a nice, easy way to earn a little coin. Keen-eyed, sure-minded observer wanted, raise building. The Samata of Kaplu requires competent hands and craftspeople to supervise a construction project. Materials provided, fair payment offered. Money, opinion, prestige. Role of patrons, exceptional success, same money, more opinion, more prestige. Role of patrons, gain a weak hook, and more provisions. Sheeran's first contract is one with stewardship focus. Once more for those in the back, the rewards shown here are not final and will be likely to change. We're going into the changes we made to schemes in future dev diary, I expect. But as you saw in our last dev diary, we now have different types of agents, a more deterministic approach to progression, and we've tried to broaden how accessible they are to characters with lacking intrigue. This is a stewardship scheme, so after traveling to the contract's location, we get to decide what type of agents we'll be relying on. Upon beginning the contract, you're given several options on how to approach your task. The plans for the construction are perhaps a little lacking in foresight. At least that's how it looks to my band and I. Little wonder that this draftsman ran into issues. Still, that shouldn't be a problem for us. We know what he was trying to build, we just need to work on how to actually do it. And we're skilled semi-professionals, of a kind at least. Looks like stewardship, intrigue, learning? No. Let's just get on with our tasks. Remember, we're here to earn. The sooner we're done, the sooner we're back on the road. These are different bonuses, maybe, that we're going for? Are you a powerful empress? I am. I can flash the game screen real quickly. If you want to stick around for when we get to gameplay. We are fairly powerful. We have most of East Central Europe. It's pretty sick. Hungary's also going to be ours shortly as well. Also, welcome. I've only got 2 followers at the moment, so I'm not actually too fussed about my choice and opts for a balanced approach. Oh, balanced success chance, speed of completion. Got it. What are you looking up? This is the dev diary for the new DLC that comes out in September? I want to say next month? Roads to Power is... yeah, September 24th. So in a month, a little less than 2 months. They're adding unlanded adventurers and a rework of Byzantium. It's going to be huge. Is that the one where you can start unlanded? Yep, that's what this dev diary is about. So we're just, we're going over this. I'm actually a few days late reading it, so... 5 days until next phase. Execute scheme. I still want to know how this is. 2 draftsmen as agents, a bailiff, and a planner and a supplier left unavailable. I'm so curious about how this new system is going to work. Our camp followers are obvious choices for agents in this contract. We'll go into more detail about the new scheme system in the future. You're teasing me so much. Light and Pran between them aren't actually half bad at engineering, but they're not great, and we can't fill out the rest of the agent slots just yet anyway. We'll give this a little bit for the bar to start creeping upward. I don't want to spend too long here, I just want to get out and see the world, but I can tarry a short while. Plenty in common. Life in close quarters tends to magnify relationships, good and bad. Fortunately for Lait and Pran, their common interest in the benefits of modest attitude and humble outlook has proven to be a strong bonding agent. The 2 laughing and joking together at camp and riding alongside one another on the road is becoming an increasingly common sight. camp followers fortunately seem to be getting along just fine, as camps tend to have fewer characters in them than landed courts. Interpersonal events like this can be far more impactful. Well, nice to see those two getting along. We've actually added some events for agents relating to each other in this DLC, both getting on and arguing as part of the free update. So this might help my contract scheme. Camp followers aren't as numerous as courtiers can be, but there are various ways to obtain additional followers. I'm interrupted from my stroll near the pavilion by the approach of a nervous stranger. A woman who introduces herself as Cheng Shao and is clearly as alien to Kapua as I. Kaplu as I. Lady, I find myself ill at ease in these lands, and I had hoped that so worldly a woman as yourself might prove willing to take a homeless Tingriest. Momentarily she pauses, steering herself for a clearly expected rejection. I understand if you've already too many people to care for, but if you'll have me, I'll serve you loyally all your days. Of course, help her find a home or kick her out. Wandering Tingri asks to join her camp. I can use all the help I can get right now, so we'll take her on. Success chance has gone up. Execute scheme. She's a bailiff. New follower skills make her a great addition to our agents for this contract. You finalize your raised building against Samata. Scheme spends 5 advantages. Schemes can be executed at any point, even if they're not fully prepared. I thought this was the case. I'm so excited to go over the scheme rework. This is going to be really cool. So it seems like you take time to prepare in order to execute it when you feel ready. And I think that's wonderful. Alright, once I've capped my success chance here, I execute the scheme, and I could wait around for better odds, but I want to go traveling, so I'm going to risk it for a biscuit. Amateur architecture is success. Money, opinion, this we all saw earlier. As ever, my band and I are models of efficiency. Construction was swift, the results steady and memorable. And although he will need to replicate it several times to get the best effect, we've given everything he needs to do that. Weighed down by our well-earned pay, we make ready to leave. A fat purse for Shirin, not bad for relatively swift work, pending future balancing for fun versus exploitability. So that's a scheme contract, a bit involved, some setup, some risk, versus how much time you'll be willing to plow into it, but simple enough in practice. Event-based contracts. As soon as we get back to camp, there's light trouble in the ranks. Move your accursed tent, damn it, Pran, this is my spot. Cries Cheng Shao, disrupting my evening walk. Pran seems unmoved, simply folding his arms across his chest. It can't be your spot if it's got my tent up on it, now can it? He snarls back. Desperate for a higher authority, Cheng Shao whirls around to me. Mistress Shirin, please, I beg of you, discipline this wretch. Side with them or make them figure it out themselves. 2 of our camp followers are having a dispute. We have the option to side with either one of them or stay out of it entirely. This is beneath me, I'm not their nanny, so I let them figure it out amongst themselves and look for an event-based contract instead. Settle boundary dispute. Warriors of good breeding, an experienced arbiter sought by Dampati of Buttar to settle a boundary dispute. Education in Kosalan law preferred. Reward offered for satisfactory conclusion. Requires you to travel to the Baron's holding and complete a challenge. Guaranteed to test stewardship, but other options will depend on what the issue is, your camp purpose, your followers, and your officers. Okay. Potential rewards less money for an exceptional success? That's interesting. I don't know if this is correct. We've seen this screen before. Another stewardship contract has the potential for an exceptional success, which here gives slightly less gold but many more provisions. Looks suitable and our stewardship isn't bad, so let's give this one a go. Most contracts will require your character to travel to a specific location in order to carry the contract out. We're seeing that here. We need to travel to the contract location for this job. It's not too far, and the forests of Lahore are beautiful. Arbitration double dues. Buttar is in an uproar before our arrival. Apparently, years of mistakes on the part of our employer and his ilk have led to many local estates of businesses being taxed twice or more, just by different collectors with different duties. After much grumbling and attempts at polite redress, things are finally threatening to boil over into something bloodier. Dharmpati Boja is at pains to let us know that our coin depends on calming the situation quickly and quietly. Think I can resolve this? Pran will stay. I'll look for a suitable officer to delegate to, or I can solve anything if I put my mind to it. We've got various options here. I can try to solve the problem with my own raw stewardship, but that's got a chance of failure and I'm not that good. Alternatively, I could just leave Pran here for a few years on loan, using his diplomacy to keep things calm. Since I don't have a quartermaster officer, I can't test their aptitude to see if they can solve the problem for me, but finally I can pass automatically in exchange for eating a chunk of stress. Well, Pran was fighting with Cheng Xiao, the Khitan Tingri I picked up, so maybe some time away would do him good. I opt to loan him out. Arbitration success. A little distraught at the prospect of being left behind, Pran nevertheless settles in and begins listening to the 1,001 objections of the people of Buttar. Dharmpati Boja gratefully walks me away, leaving our lessers to their toil. Very kind of you to leave us such a promising servant. I assure you that he will be well looked after during his stay. Now I believe there was a matter of your pay. Event-based contracts can vary a bit. This was a relatively simple one, with a variety of different issues and solutions. Among the same theme that could have been presented, but others involve more complex chains that must be navigated successfully and in short order for your coin. Let's try something that's a bit more involved next. The only remaining contract I've got in this area is prowess focused, which isn't my specialty, so I take my camp west through the mountains and into Transoxiana. Here several travel contracts await me and I leaf through them looking to find for one I find interesting. Reliable mercenaries. Curious Naib seeks company and protection for his next escapade. This is a transport contract requiring you to travel to a distant county. An exceptional success, more money, more prestige. Get a weak hook either way. These generally involve far more travel than other contract types. Leaving his laden mule huffing away outside, Naib Rasan of Rabat El Hilf is ushered to my tent. Greetings, it said that you're a woman of the world, perhaps one with gall enough to venture far by the side of an ever-curious explorer like myself. Wayfarers fawn over the grand emirate of Khorasan as a grand and most beauteous capital, perhaps the finest in all the lands thereabout. Please take me to the Arg of Nishapur, protect me on the road, and I'll reward you with coins. How grand, let's go. I'll do it and take my camp to Nishapur with us, or I don't want this contract. Most contracts involving travel give you a choice of whether to take your camp with you or double back for them afterwards. We're not exactly mercenaries, but we can probably escort a baron. He wants to go west, further into Khorasan, which suits me just fine, so I'll be taking my camp with me on the journey. Damn, ads coming up already. It's a intimidating path. Travel as a landless adventurer is subject to the same travel safety mechanics that were introduced in tours and tournaments. Oh right, the struggle for Persia is happening. Excuse me. I don't know why my allergies are so bad today. Okay, not a deal breaker. We built up some gold. Let's stick by our word and hire some travel options to boost safety, even if it means we won't make a profit on this venture. Along the way, travel danger events bedevil us. Light managed to lose some provisions and get beaten up in a tavern fight, and I caught typhus. We found ourselves at last in the dry lands of Arg of Nishapur, our destination. I wasn't quite sure I'd make it, gasped Naib. But you've been a steady guide through every peril. Thank you. Your pay is well earned, and you must admit, Nishapur is astounding. Not every contract pays off in the end, either in gold or effort. But we made it, earning a fairly measly 44 gold for our trouble and my disease. I'll not be taking work from Naib again, I think, but serves me right for taking a job from a measly baron. Higher tier travel contracts, especially those in less fragmented areas, tend to offer longer journeys and better pay. After waiting a few months for my illness to recede, I decided to go on the road again. The ongoing war between Khorasan and Markan could last another year or two, and their battling makes all the travel I might have to do for contracts much riskier than usual. Seeking safer lands, I move west into Tabaristan to the south. To the south, Arabia is embroiled in the Azriqua rebellion, and to the north is steppe and desert that's likely to pose its own dangers. We're not going back home, so the west road towards the Caucasus is the easiest path open to us. From our camp, we survey the available contracts in northern Persia. Aha! Shortly after arriving, I see a contract put out only by the AI using their marshal to increase control. That's another type of contract to demonstrate, so let's take a look. Fight corruption, honest lovers of love and justice. Amir Abd al-Aziz's realm suffers from rampant bandits and fearful peasants. Anyone willing to keep all of them in line will be rewarded. Fairly low pay, exceptional success gets a weak hook. Gets both the Wali and the Emir. Gets a hook on both the Wali and the Emir, perhaps? An AI ruler puts a contract to assist him in performing his duties as marshal. How much longer do we have on here? Let's see if I can finish this before ads run. Looks like the rewards are mostly the same for both successes and exceptional successes here, but if I really succeed them, I also get to add his boss to my roll of patrons. More on that in about a section or so. His boss is a duke, and I'm not famous enough for them to give me work yet otherwise, so I'll shoot for that. Wali Karil, Emir Abd al-Aziz Marshal visits my encampment for a day. As soon as we are left alone, he whispers, "It's embarrassing to admit, but I need your help dealing with the peasants of Dinawar." The Marshal takes a deep breath and continues in a more confident voice. "They don't respect the Emir's authority. I suspect a foreign influence, but nevertheless it needs to stop." Alright, let me snooze on the ad here. We'll run it after we get through this section. We won't be moving our camp that far south. We're trying to avoid trouble rather than embrace it. So we travel with just our trusted followers and leave our domicile safely in Tabaristan. When we arrive at Dinawar, I get to hear the other side of the coin. Purush, a local peasant, meets us and explains their perspective. Firstly, we have a mind of our own and we don't appreciate the allegations of foreign influences. Secondly, we didn't agree to how the realm is governed under Emir Abd al-Aziz of Hamadan's rule. few more complicated contracts include their own custom widgets for tracking purposes. Here we can choose to try and stir up trouble against our employer, which we might be able to utilize or which we might just suit our goals in this part of the world, but we're going to stay honest here and do our job instead. All we're after is coin, not problems. The peasants cave to our pressure and our reward is delivered swiftly. Emir al-Qassam is fortunate that only the one county in the realm is particularly low on control, but so are we. If he had less of a handle on things, we might have needed to tour quite a few more peasant holdings in order to earn our keep, the risk of failure increasing as we go. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and run ads. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Everybody get up, stretch, get some water, make some coffee, make a sandwich. Take care of your meat vessel. It is important. You only get one of them. I'm going to get up a second and stretch as well, and I will be right back with you in 3 minutes. See you in a sec. Alright, and welcome back, everybody. Switch on over there. Thank you. Lastly, we're going to skip ahead 10 years. Shirin advances through Persia, Anatolia, and up into the belly of Europe. After a while of taking backwater contracts, she branches out into mercenary work, spending time profitably fighting her way through a shattered Poland's many wars and gradually building up a respectable 1,500 men. Follow returned Pran the Simple. After years away with Demparty Boja, my loyal follower Pran the Simple has finally found his way back to us. He has scarcely changed since the day he left the fiery vanguard, for good or for ill, and is simply glad to be back amongst familiar company. Old friends and fresh faces alike jostle to see the returned man, each equally happy at a bit of unexpected good news. It took him 10 years. Is at least what it seems. Along the way, Pran returns, never mind. He's the same as ever, but he could have easily returned with a new faith, culture, skills, or spouse. If he was unlucky, maybe he wouldn't have returned at all. Now, mercenary contracts are a bit of a special case, since adventurers in particular need to be wary of getting stack wiped. An army obliterated in a moment is much more of a concern when you don't have a realm to easily reinforce them. So even if your troops are powerful, you need to be wary of casualties. Stand with us, trustworthy captains wanted. Military aid needed in a war-torn Blotha? It's been years since I've had to pronounce that letter. For 229 days. This is a mercenary contract requiring you to aid in a war. The employer, Chieftain Yaramir, is losing by 82% war score in the Poltarian conquest of the chiefdom of Lubs. I'm gonna stop trying to embarrass myself. Not trying to. I'm gonna stop embarrassing myself trying to speak Polish. Yaramir's side has 56 soldiers, while the enemy side has 1,427. You will gain gold based on war contribution. Will gain piety based on war contribution. We'll add him to your roll of patrons, and you gain a weak hook on Captain Yaramir. Mercenary contracts are an excellent opportunity for martial-focused adventurers to earn some gold. Yaramir here is having a very bad day and looking for around, say, 1,500 soldiers of no fixed paymaster. I think I know someone who can help. Shirin lost an eye while poaching. The war is actually pretty typical of the type I've been fighting in this area. Large unified politics are bad for business, so I take the side of smaller independents, provided I can beat their attackers and help them stay that way. An adventuring army hastens to reach its employer before the war ends. Whoops, bit of a mad dash to reach the battlefield in time here. The enemy actually has a slight numbers advantage, but I'm willing to bet my men-at-arms and camp bonuses can more than swing the result. Elite mercenary troops face off against a numerically superior landed army. I like that mercenaries are going to have bonuses associated with them. The smaller, more elite adventurer force inflicts more casualties, but its losses won't be sustainable in a larger conflict. Yeah, it's not great losses, but wouldn't be the end of the world in a regular war. And just as quickly over. The enemy can reconstitute his forces much better than we can, but we've maimed him and taken his chancellor's prisoner. To reconstitute that, Landy. Oh, did work post its schedule just now? I'll have to look at that after stream. As our pay depends on our contribution, we'll ideally want to keep hitting them while they're weak. But we won't win unless we keep our employers' lands unoccupied. With the enemy's capital occupied and the employer's lands freed, our adventurer just needs one more good battle to earn her pay. A swift counter-siege alongside our employer flips the war score immediately in our favor. One more battle should end this. Round 2 goes as poorly for the foe as round 1. As if the clear result of the battle wasn't enough, we capture our foe in the aftermath. Well, we've won anyway, so I ransom him quickly. My employer doesn't need to know, and I couldn't really complain if he did. Your contributions were vital to winning the war, and the bravery of your men is admired by my soldiers. You did well and deserve every coin I owe you. Grateful employer pays his mercenaries. Chieftain Yaramir, an honest man, pays us our due. It's a modest reward from a modest ruler, but at least he didn't give me typhus. Were he a grander ruler, perhaps I'd try to do a few contracts for him to earn his good graces, then see if he'd take me as a vassal. I'm far from home and I can't keep fighting, however, forever. Special thanks to our Patreon supporters. Oh, they think they're funny. Of course, once you've done a contract for someone, you're a bit more known to them than just any random wanderer. Gow, gow, gow. Hey, Gustav, good to see you. Most successfully completed contracts allow you to add your employer to your role of patrons. Although some equally basic or simple contracts may require an exceptional success before you add your employer as a patron. Patrons are, simply put, people you can try to mooch off of. By burning opinion with them, you can extract favors, obtain unnegotiated rewards, and even garner things such as exotic marriages or troops. The more you try to take, the more annoyed they'll get with you, and the less that you'll be able to rely on them for work in the future. Family and friends can be lobbied for the same favors even if you've done no work for them, provided they like you, of course. List of patrons. I love this winter art. That looks great. Local patrons, distant patrons. Maybe this is to move your camp to them for this button. This one is to lobby them for favors? Not sure. Your list of patrons is housed in your camp view. As adventurers don't have a fixed abode, we assume they move some nights even when stationary within one barony. Traveling on is an area as foraging gets bad or the locals get rowdy. Let alone the infrastructure of a domain behind them, there are some fairly hard distance restrictions on where you can ask patrons for favors from. This is what I was thinking. You can see those in the interface here as we divide the list up so you can easily check on who you can blog from now and who you need to pay a visit to mooch off of. The distance requirement stops you requesting support and favors from a string of people half a world away and encourages you to form local connections. Of course, not every jobbing adventurer is a roving scholar out to teach the children of the world or engage exclusively in honorable mercenary work. Some of them, shockingly, have been known to lie, cheat, swindle, steal, kidnap, and kill. Enter the criminal contract. Criminal contracts are visually distinct from the other contracts on the map. These have different icons on the map. They're slathered in red and mud to mark them apart visually, and will tend to offer greater rewards for even mediocre successes. Criminal contracts may be performed on behalf of the employer, say kidnapping their rival, or even targeting the employer themselves. For instance, preying on the travelers of someone foolish enough to advertise weekend wilderness patrols in their domain. So I do need to say, this icon is not clear enough for me. This is a colorblind problem. I understand that. This is not going to be a problem for everybody. But if you did not say that they are visually distinct from other contracts on the map, I would not have understood why you were showing me this. Maybe if I see them side by side, it might help, but I really can't tell how this is any different from... Oh, just show me another contract. Okay, you know what? No, this is probably a criminal contract. It's not clear enough, but side by side I can kind of tell. So I take that back slightly. This is going to be confusing, though. Gow! 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 Ambush Traveler. See, this I can tell. This is dark enough. Trustworthy swords for hire. Krakow is bedeviled by robbers, bandits, and brigands of all kinds. Proficient fighters sought urgently. Direct all dealings to the court of Krakow. Need an extra Gao today? I'm happy to provide. Contract requires you to travel to a distant holding, waylaying characters to take their gold as you go, through either via prowess, martial, or intrigue challenges. Your potential gold earned depends entirely on which travelers you meet and mug on the road. You might meet extraordinarily wealthy dukes or impoverished pilgrimaging courtiers. You gain the trait Gallows Bait. It's a great name. Gain 10 trait experience in Bandit. Ambushing travelers gives a chance to attack pool characters, traveling rulers, and even other adventurers. The drawback is that criminal contracts are crimes, you know? Unless you're performing a crime on behalf of the employer, e.g. murdering someone for them, you'll lose opinion with them rather than gain it, and it won't add them to your roll of patrons. Depending on the exact crime you do, you may even lose prestige for succeeding due to your lowered reputation. A violated employer will also receive a criminal opinion of you, making them able to imprison you should they ever get the chance to try, and much more likely to try and evict you from their realm. An interaction we'll be covering more next week. Burn property. Diligent itinerants of suitable character. Generous pay offered for urgent ground clearance, confidentiality, and necessity. Applicants are directed to Province Count's Castle. Requires you to travel to a location and commit arson via an intrigue challenge. Martial prowess and officers may be used instead. We get money, we get provisions, we get opinion, roll of patrons, we cook, gain experience, gain gallows bait. Criminal contracts generally pay very well for the amount of work that needs doing. The real short-term consequences to undertaking criminal contracts is the gallows bait trait, which measures how much the world at large considers you to be an upstart petty thug. Though there are some niche benefits to leveling up its various tracks, overall this negative fame trait gradually makes the rest of the world hate you more and more as you successfully complete more crime, with less successful criminals receiving lower amounts of trait XP for being less experienced. You can be a bandit, trickster, thief, poacher, marauder. Tricksters gain general opinion, or courtier and guest opinion. That's interesting. Gallows Bait has many different tracks, each reflecting a different category of crime that a landless adventurer might commit. When a landed noble or even a fancy courtier or a baron's guest commits a murder, it's an exciting scandal for the history books. When an adventurer loots a caravan in the woods, they're just a petty bandit upstart deserving no more attention than it takes to tie the noose around their neck. Of course, some non-criminal contracts will also offer the chance to conduct yourself unlawfully, particularly if you genuinely fancy yourself somewhat of a bandit. But I've changed. Many a petty bandit, lying swindler, and deadly marauder have managed to make the jump to a respected landed ruler through the centuries. And they've generally got one thing in common. They know how to use their new gains to cover up their old crimes. Should you tire of the world's disdain, either as an adventurer or a newly minted lordling, you'll probably want to lose those general opinion debuffs with the wipe slate decision. The world can be convinced to forget, for a price, of course. Make bygones bygones. It's a lot of money, decent amount of prestige. Oh, I love the, they're nice, they're poetic sounding names. Even the most foul criminals can be forgiven if they have the coin to buy goodwill. Given that we expect you to move from county to county searching for work, what's to stop you from, say, moving from Brittany to Tibet in one long trip? Well, you can try it, I guess, but if you've got enough provisions, and assuming that travel danger doesn't cost you any more on the way. Starting provisions run thin here, point at which we start eating our dogs or something. Fair enough. Moving your camp costs provisions. As you might expect, the provision cost increases with distance. Since you don't have any land of your own, you don't have a steady source of income or a way of obtaining food. When you're camping out in a province, this isn't too big of a deal. Your followers can forage, do odd jobs, or at least avoid calorie-intensive activities, so your provision count won't go down. We did experiment with the idea of a ticking reduction a bit during development, but found that it became way too easy to get stuck in death spirals where not playing efficiently at all times would cause you to starve to death, even some very silly scenarios. For example, you can't find enough gold in a high-dev farmland in the middle of summer and die of starvation in a berry field. The intended flow is that if you're stopped, you can tread water to give you a shot at refilling your provisions, if you stand a chance at completing any of the contracts in the area, that is. When you're on the road, though, you have far less time for subsistence living and have to use whatever supplies you have in reserve. Provisions represent the sum total of your traveling rations, whatever water you're carrying, or if it wouldn't be easily obtainable otherwise, and even odds and ends like spare fabrics or tools for repairing your tents. Provisions represent the total amount of food, water, and shelter camp can provide. Camp lose provisions while moving location. Exactly how much is affected by the size of their men-at-arms, terrain moved across, and what officers are currently hired. Camp followers running low on provisions will start suffering privatation events, starting with characters quickly losing opinion of their leader, escalating quickly to starvation and death. Provisions use the apple as an icon. As an adventurer's camp moves from one barony to another, they expend provisions with every province they travel. The cost is determined by the terrain, plus the men-at-arms the adventurer has. Every men-at-arms regiment now has a provision cost shown for adventurers. Light infantry tend to be cheap to feed, though their numbers may add up over time, while elephantry are positively hellish consumers of provisions, and elaborate heavy cavalry come with not only their beasts, but their support personnel who need clothing and feeding too. Large armies will want to make pit stops to resupply, whereas smaller camps of followers can often afford to go further on less. The scratch in my throat is pissing me off right now. Moving even moderately sized mercenary bands is expensive, requiring to build your camp to match your playstyle. Go! 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 Your maximum number of provisions is an increasable cap determined by the buildings in your camp. When you start to fall below a certain number, you'll begin suffering privatation events. These involve your followers losing faith, some leaving you, or losing substantial amounts of opinion. Eventually, both you and your followers will risk lost health, permanent negative traits, and even death. Organizing camp's motley collection of followers, weapon, and pack animals is inevitable for any larger operation. Find more officers using Scout for talent, unlocks the head porter, receives more transport contracts, provision capacity, supply capacity, travel speed, more heavy infantry, archer, light cav, and skirmisher regiments. There are 7 different buildings for camps as well as the central pavilion. The closer you are to 0 provisions, the worse the privatation events you can receive. Never travel without provisions if you can help it. I can't remember the last time I've eaten. My throat feels like parchment. Everything hurts. I can't recall where I'm going, just that I need to go on. I don't want to go on. I just want this all to end. Pretty huge penalties here, including the stress. To help the throat. Thank you. Traveling without provisions will frequently kill or permanently hurt you, as well as substantially reducing your armies. Otherwise, adventurers can travel to any barony in the map. The only limit is the size of your men-at-arms and the number of provisions you've stocked. Unless you've been exiled from a certain realm, of course. More on that next dev diary. Thank you for the hydrates. The easiest way to gain provisions is from contracts, but they can also be obtained via hunt activities, a dedicated decision for foraging events, and the new visit settlement decision. Oh, that's a lot of hydrate. Big sippy. Chug, chug, chug. We drowning a little. Alright, I'm gonna run out of water. I only have a half gallon here. Come on. Come on, y'all. Alright, I took the top off for that one. Of course, not every time an adventurer travels them requires to take their whole camp with them, so they don't always expend provisions when they move. Only if their domicile is being moved around the map. You're explicitly told when you'll be spending provisions and how many you expect to spend. Traveling with new provisions is going to be the new speedrun meta for cannibalism, potentially. Good examples of travel that won't generally cost provisions are things like turning up at a feast or tournament, or going on a pilgrimage. Contracts that involve travel generally give you the option of whether or not to bring your camp with you when you do. So if you're touring some lord's realm to collect taxes, you don't need to pay as you go unless you choose to. We've opted to find a new resource rather than just use the army supply map mode for this, largely so the whole military system doesn't have to be tied to the balance of how adventurers play, and vice versa. Doubly so since not everyone is going to own the DLC. Narratively, you can think of it this way. An army on the move from the landed realm can forge much more aggressively, and with a lot less regard for local laws or consequences, than a traveling mercenary company, which has nowhere to flee other than its own camp. Unless you settle on banditry. But they kind of discussed that.
New achievement I want. Meat is back on the menu. Refill your provisions with your excess men-at-arms.
With your excess men-at-arms. Like administrative families, adventurers have a domicile. Unlike administratives, who have majestic, sprawling estates, adventurers only have a humble camp to call their own. Tribal camp in the snow with a mysterious guest. Barber's tent, mess tent, roaring campfire, camp perimeter, free dude. Pavilion, mysterious guest. Another free dude. I don't know who the mysterious guest is. Oh, is it this little guy over here? I love this art. This is great art. These camps have fewer building slots than the estates, but provide a partial refund of their construction costs on destruction, including if an adventurer becomes landed. This gives you a bit more freedom to try different configurations of building and upgrades, changing them out over time and retooling your camp according to its current purpose or adapting to the changing world. Knowledgeable herbalists. Mobile brewers. Many camp buildings have upgrades that unlock unique camp officers. I see that. Also, like estates, camp buildings have many internal upgrades, though these do not branch and can be applied in any combination. Some of these upgrades are locked to your camp purpose, meaning that adventurers don't have access to all the same upgrades at the same time. Specializing in this way or that should pay dividends as upgrades, both internal and not, have various powerful benefits, and many of them unlock new types of officers, the adventuring equivalent of a court position. Good, we can set up breweries and struggle Persia and become bootleggers? Sounds that way. Reference corpus. Mortician's tools. Some camp buildings are less savory than others. Gain gold from battle victories in any battles that enter the county of your camp. Natural dread, plague danger, plague resistance. Ugh. In addition to your role of patrons, which we discussed earlier, we have the camp temperament. It's a simple measure of how many of your followers, the adventure equivalent of courtiers, actually like you. If the majority like you, you get bonuses. If the majority dislikes you, you get penalties. If there's no majority, you get nothing. Camp temperament, steadfast. 2 complacent, 2 detractor, 3 supporters. Don't mind me just listening to what folks are thinking about the DD. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this. I think they're doing a good job of not making it just a string of events. Good to see you, by the way. And Fusion wants an event to eat your men-at-arms. The bonuses and penalties scale according to your prestige level, so less notable adventurers have a bit more slack to ignore this, while more famous ones must manage their camp more carefully. Of course, you can ask any follower you dislike to leave your camp, but their friends and family, who are likely traveling with you too, will likely take offense and leave as well. Removing followers is certainly doable, but something you likely want to take a gentle approach to rather than exiling anyone who disagrees with the drop of a hat. You're not a feudal ruler, and people won't treat you like one. I have no control over adding things to games. Just the poor can they get to voice the videos. I also understand that, but you know. A happy camp schemes better and fights better. An unhappy camp schemes slower and fights poorly. Happy followers pay dividends in events, whilst unhappy followers may, if left long enough, resort to drastic measures. Alright, we're getting there. This is a really long dev diary. Key distances from landed play. I just wish people didn't think I was AI. Oh, I'm sorry. That's rude. We'll round out now by going over a few remaining key differences between adventurers and non-adventurers, with further nitty-gritty to follow the next dev diary. Probably the largest obvious change in pure content would be lifestyle trees, which have been completely redone for any effects that wouldn't be immediately useful to adventuring characters. I didn't even consider this. It's one of the biggest dev diaries we've ever dropped. It's huge. I realized it was huge. I didn't realize it was this huge. This includes new modifiers, run away with me. Enables the elope scheme on non-lovers. Elope success chance increased and more scheme secrecy. Just part 1, I know. Hey Toxicite, good to see you. Faithful. Clergy opinion plus 10. Steadfast temperament now grants a scaling faith hostility advantage. Ooh. That could be nasty for mercenaries in the right part of the world. Loot and plunder. Finishing a siege awards 20 times the holding's loot value as provisions. Okay. I got excited too quickly. That's still excellent, but... Inspiration is everywhere. Seasoned travelers trait experience gain. Followers will eventually become inspired to write books. Crime pays. Criminal contract gold rewards are doubled in the torturer tree. Trying to remember what traits these are replacing, and I don't remember exactly which is where. Enables the encourage relationships travel opinion. Now kiss. Smashing your followers together. Wandering missionary, monthly piety per night, faith creation and reformation costs. Enables the attempt to convert interaction with anyone whose domain your camp is located in. Ooh, you could do some mischief. Gain prestige when successfully using the attempt to convert interaction. You could do some mischief with that. Under Theologian. Take the custom where it comes. Men-at-Arms recruitment. Wanderer trade experience gains. May recruit cultural men-at-arms from where you are located. Oh. Become a Jesus, a singular Jesus. May recruit cultural men-at-arms from where you are located. You're telling me I could have, for example, longbows and elephants just by traveling around without having to hybridize weirdly? That's wonderful. That's some spiffing Brit shit. Singular Jesus, a less popular Johnny Cash song. A1, singular Jesus. There's only one of him. I've run out of ideas. Thank you, Fusion. The lifestyle trees remain largely the same for ordinary landed characters. Mechanically, the perks are the same and only the functionality is flipped, so becoming an adventurer with a full tree of 2 of perks stats you out with many useful things already unlocked, while an adventurer becoming landed carries over their experience into their new life. So, do you get stuck with the adventurer perk trees if you become landed? Lifestyle trees remain largely the same. Mechanically, the perks are the same and only the functionality is flipped. Okay. I think I understand this. With a full tree or 2 of perks starts you out with many useful things already unlocked. Carries over their experience into their new life. I think I'm reading that right. As an adventurer, you'll notice a few things renamed for immersion. The most obvious is that your courtiers will be generally referred to as followers instead, and your court positions as your camp officers. We'll be going into those a lot more detail in the next DD. Functionally, there's still the same things working the same way, but aesthetics are important too. Wholeheartedly agree. Activities. On this front, you'll be unsurprised to hear that adventurers cannot host grand activities of any kind, nor can they host proper feasts. They can hunt, though. If they don't have permission from their local ruler, generally obtained via the role of patrons, then it constitutes poaching, with the appropriate gallows bait awarded. Hunting awards provisions regardless. Pilgrimages and university visits for owners of wards and wardens are acceptable as normal. There are, however, no restrictions on inviting adventurers to things, so they can turn up as guests anywhere they're invited to. Some of the new adventurer lifestyle perks variants allow you to request feasts and even tournaments from other characters for you to attend. Replacing the grandiose, luminous, luxurious affair of even the humblest nobles' feasts, adventurers instead receive the new camp revelry micro-activity. Having fun and getting drunk under the stars. Fuck yeah. Here you can relieve stress and gain opinion with their followers, which is important for maintaining your camp temperament. Host a small celebration at your camp, funded by gold but modified by your stocks of provisions. Invites will include everyone from the camp plus optionally local rulers. Camp parties provide an opportunity to befriend your followers, gain special contracts, and manage stress. Is my roommate vacuuming right now? That's so rude. I don't think it's picking up on my mic, but that's so rude. Anticipated rewards from hosting a camp revelry activity. Lose stress, gain provisions. May gain skill points, gain contracts, gain artifacts, may recruit new followers. They just need to add societies and allow us to go on quests. I want to kill 6 wolves for their pelts to get XP. I mean, they kind of have quests. That's sort of the basis of the gameplay loop is contracts. So I don't think there's hunting wolves for their pelts, but it's pretty close. It may be pretty close, I mean to say. A small but noticeable facet of adventuring is that they cannot demand conversion of their followers unless they've built a specific camp building upgrade. The portable shrine. Adventurers lack the compelling force to be able to effect such drastic life changes with simply a demand. Followers can be spelled, but they won't expand in their faith unless you've at least somewhat invested in yours. Makes sense. Did my music stop? It did. Put that on loop. Alright. Without a portable shrine, adventurers cannot attempt to convert their followers. Less noticeable, but no less important, was the work done by 2 designers to update new My roommate is vacuuming the hallway outside this room. So irritated right now. I was lucky enough to be performing vital other duties when this job was handed out, and they tore through nearly 900 events, over 200 decisions, and more than 1,660 character interactions to update their mechanics and localization to work for landless play. I wish good luck and good mental health to whichever poor bastards got sucked doing the same for our total conversion mods. Hilarious. Return to the warm embrace of Dev Diaries, it's warm. 25 to $30. Truly. As we talk towards the start of this Dev Diary, adventurers don't really experience succession politics the same way that even the smallest realm does. There's no laws binding them save their own will, and comparatively little to be divided or fought over anyway. Even a successful mercenary company is just 1 or 2 bad wars away from complete ruin. Instead of access to electives, partition, or complex single-heir preferences, camps are locked into a single succession type. Title will be inherited by your oldest child or next closest relative, provided they are a follower. Characters not considered part of the camp cannot inherit it, meaning it will never be inherited by any character with a title of their own, though prisoners and wards are valid. If no relative is available, the follower with the highest prowess inherits instead, and the camp passes from your dynasty. Let me get some more water. Should make tea for the next one of these. Nice honeyed tea, sounds good. Though they are locked in this succession, adventurers do still receive some benefits from their independence, gaining access to 2 powerful tools of succession. They may freely designate their valid heir, and they may adopt any successor willing to agree as a child of their own. Children adopted in this fashion join the character's dynasty, but immediately spin off their own new house to mark their unorthodox lineage. Interesting. Becomes part of your dynasty, but will create a new house. Succession in a camp is informal at best, allowing them to adopt freely from amongst willing characters. As they have no lands to use their council tasks on, and because many of the benefits would be simply pointless for them, adventurers do not have councils or counselors. Core benefits and mechanics of a council, like a spouse's stat buffs or your spymaster catching schemes, are instead taken in by your second in command, a camp officer available to all. Additionally, unless you have some leverage over them or a truly fantastic reputation, rulers generally won't marry their children into a smelly band of wanderers, no matter how noble some of that band may have once been. You cannot even ask them unless they are under your role of patrons. Of course, you can work your way up the prestige levels, do a contract for a king, and see if you can squeeze a marriage to yourself or your child out of one of them. But that's a lot of work to put in, especially if they marry your intended spouse off in the meanwhile, versus swallowing your pride and simply wedding a peasant. Likewise, adventurers cannot use the invite to camp interaction on anyone but close relatives and player heirs. Your camp may pick up many people on the road, but you cannot offer the stable life of a court that a landed ruler or administrative family can. By design, landless adventurers must find or earn their characters manually. They cannot simply lure them in with a promise of a bed at court. Finally, and I'm sure this should be obvious from everything else I've said, adventurers do not use legitimacy mechanics. Alright, that's the core flow, key differences, and what you can expect to experience as the bread and butter of adventurer play. I'll be back next week for more details on the specifics, so stay tuned. As ever, I'll be around in the thread for the next couple of hours to answer questions, duck accusations, graciously and humbly accept compliments, steal ideas, and etc. Okay, let me get some more water here. Alright, if you are watching this later on YouTube, thank you for getting through all of that. That was a lot. And I will see you on Twitch. For Twitch, let's keep going and get back to the game.